Good morning, dear learners. I was continuing with you with the Australian novels, and today we shall move into war novels, and we shall explore how war novels are important in the domain of Australian literature, and then we will see, what is the angle of these Australians when they talk about wars, because you might have done enough of British war literature. Especially they spoke a lot about First World War and then Second World War respectively. What was their stand, and we will see what is Australia's stand, in what way they are similar and what way they are different. That we are going to see. But when they talk about war, irrespective of the country, whether it comes from Britain, whether it comes from many other countries, or maybe when it is about India, or Australians even, all of them, to some extent, they have got similar stand, because they talk about the destruction of war, the havoc that war creates. Okay, and they say each literature of war says that one has to think before sending the troop to the war, because it is destructive, and it is baseless to have to have such mass killing, to have such mass destruction. They generally speak about the about the havocs of war. So similarly, you will find similar aspects in Australian novels as well. We'll be going through, but there are many other things. There are many special features of Australian war novels, because here you will see most of them are themselves war veterans, means they have come back from war, and they are trying to make the public aware of what happens actually in the war field. Okay, and what are the havocs created, so that uh, war literature for Australian writings, they are a kind of bridge between the army people, the people who are going for war, and between the public. Okay, it is a bridge that connects the idea from the army people, army men, to the civilians. Okay, so this we shall see today. And then when they are writing about war, they are writing about the trauma that the soldier undergoes. Okay, the pain, the suffering, the anguish. Okay, and the excessive, mm, a traumatic condition that the soldier goes through is depicted by these writers. Okay, but you should remember that they are not only novels, but they were very quick to produce poems. They produced articles. Okay, they wrote novels, so they were very quick in their publishing what they felt about wars. Okay, so this we are going to see, and we will see what kind of wars happened during this time. A little bit of background I'll give you, and then we'll go through the specific novel that you have in this paper. Okay, so you will read here, mainly we will read Thomas Keneally as a novelist. Okay, then we'll see how Schindler's Ark is one of the major writings of war novels, okay, of this genre, that we shall see. Now, how this war, and what made the advent of war in the Australian domain, that we will see first. So for that we need to refer to a little bit of history of Australian domain. We shall see that, and then we'll move on to our specific novel, okay, as a genre of the time when there was war. Now, we have spoken a lot about our, the exploration of uh, Australia, okay, by British, and that was known as first flight. How they came here, that was the earliest settlement of the Europeans here. Okay, so at that time, those days were the initial days when they had war. Okay, just give me 1 second. Yeah. So I was discussing with you the whole background, um, the whole initiation of a war in Australian domain. So you see that initially the first war that is recorded in history was the attack of Botany Bay in 1978. Sorry, 1788. Okay, 1788. Now, what is this attack of Botany Bay? You will see here. Actually, this is the encounter between a British captain called Arthur Phillip. Okay, and when he brought the first fleet, okay, the first exploration that he had, and this was the initiation of war in the domain of Australia that the British captain had. He started the war here. Okay, and this was followed by many other horrific wars in the domain of Australia. Now, when you move a little ahead to 20th century, then there was, there was an, abbreviation called ANZAC, ANZSC. ANZAC is Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. Okay, so what happened here in ANZAC or Australian and New Zealand Army Corps? Here, there were troops who tried to, attack their place called Gallipoli. Okay, and these people, these natives, these Australians, they were, they had a lot of zeal to free their country from all these of disturbances, these kinds of disturbances and violence. Okay, and that led to Australia as a nation. They were such patriotic at that time that they made their troops. Okay, and they were ready to face any violence against their nation, and this helped them to bound Australia as a nation. So well, uh, you know, Anzac became a tradition. Okay, and this was created on 25th April 1915, and every year to April 1915, 25th April 1915 is considered as Australia's National Day. This you must remember. This troop was created at that time to protect Australia from all sorts of intruders, and this day when Anzac was created is known as their National Day. Okay, and the day is 25th April 1915. So after this Gallipoli troops, they fought many wars. Okay, they in this particular year of 1915, this troop was formed, and this troop fought many wars. Okay, so this doesn't mean that the troop was formed and others were scared. There were no intruders. No, they formed. They fought many wars. Uh, the great European wars were also fought by this group. Then Second World War and other wars were also fought by this troop. Okay, there were many wars of Europe where they contributed. Then they contributed in Second World War also. Okay, now, these wars and these world wars also had a great effect in Australian domains, in their towns, their churches, their public places were very much affected. People in general were very much affected by these wars. Okay, so you can see that till today, Australians are very proud of their military past. Okay, until today, they love to read about their military past, how they fought with bravery, with zeal, and how they were so much devoted to protect their country against any kind of enemy or intruder. Okay, so they love reading it. They till today they love celebrating the victories of their past army men. Okay, and till today they grieve about the loss of the loved ones that they had. Okay, during those days. So this Anzac term has been strictly controlled by government. Government doesn't allow Anzac. A lot of publicity, a lot of advertisement. Okay, but Anzac depicts, you must remember this, Anzac depicts the experience of soldiers who were fighting the battles, staying in trenches, staying in the war fields, how they fought with bravery. Okay, so Anzac is a symbol of that, but government doesn't allow to the term to get misused. Okay, then that is a very restricted term. I think you remember what is ANZAC, Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. Okay. Now, when were having wars, which usually started from 18th century, but 20th century also they had lots of wars, including the whole world saw World War I, and these people have fought. Anzac has fought World War II as well. So these Australian people were quite intrigued about war. Okay, they wanted to know what is happening actually in the war fields. So they were immediately the print industry started writing articles, they started writing news about wars, they started writing poems. Okay, in the creative area they started writing fiction in order to make people aware of the adversities of war. Okay, so and immediately Australian writers also started addressing these dire issues. And as I told you, mainly the veterans, those who got back from Australian wars, they wrote masterfully, because they understood better what is war, what are the havocs of war, because they had that lived experience of war. So when they got back and when they wrote, they had extreme clarity, they had extreme precision, they had excessive experience of war. So they wrote quite meticulously, and their writings were read and people understood what is war. So if you see in the beginning of 19th century, this canon of Australian war literature became very popular, just like British counterparts. Okay, just like British were writing at that time about the havocs of war. I think that there are a group of particular writers in British domain who write war literature. Okay, in the modern period, and then slowly that went into the postmodern period. But usually during modern period, they had a lot of war literature. Similarly, Australia was also facing a lot of war and devastation. So similarly, in beginning of 19th century, they started writing war literature, just like the British counterparts. So uh, you know uh, till today, means till early 19th century, Australians had a little bit of, or you can say more inclination, more fondness towards British literature. So you find that there are many writers, many Australian writers who are inspired by British prose and poetry writers, and to some extent they adapted the style of British writing style. Okay, but British writers had many other problems, that which is the right mode to express their feelings and emotions of war. Okay, what is the right method, what is the right mode of expressing the dire emotional mm, traumas that soldiers were facing at that time. So this was the challenge, which is the mode that they should write. So first they started with, by mode I mean genre. So first they started with poetry. Okay, they found that poetry is the right way to express the problems that they were facing. Okay. Mm, uh, then they found that they feel that emotions could best be expressed through poetries. Okay, and maybe civilians will understand more through poetries. Okay, but later, what happened after writing poetry, they experimented with novels, because they thought that novel will broadly explain whatever is happening. Poetry will be very short. Okay, chronicling such great wars, big wars, such big devastations will be very precise if you write in poetry. So now they prefer to to experiment with novels and put their war experiences in their novels. Diksha, you have raised your hand. Is there something that you want to ask? And even Suman, you are raising your hands. Do you want to question something? Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, tell me.
Ma'am, I had a query that how do we submit our assignments? Do we submit it
Oh,
online or offline?
okay, Diksha. First of all, I'm very much restricted to teaching only, taking this class only. Okay, Diksha. So
Yes,
about these assignments, you can ask in the office, in the regional offices, because I'm confined to teaching only. So
yes,
I cannot give you, an impartial answer regarding this. So better ask there in the in this group, or whatever they call regional centers. All right.
okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Now Diksha, tell me, Diksha, Suman, and Famida, um, are you able to understand what I'm saying? Or for past 3 4 classes, I have been going on speaking, but I don't know if you're hearing or not, or if you're taking it or not. Just tell me, Diksha, am I being clear with you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because these online classes are just one sided, and if
Yes,
you have problem, you do ask. Yes, Suman. Sorry, are you saying something, Suman?
No, ma'am.
Okay, fine. Then should I continue?
yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay. Now what you saw, what I was talking is about the war. Okay, about war literature and how they initiated with writing poetry, and they started expressing their experiences regarding war. But then they thought that poetry is very small, very precise. If they want to chronicle the whole event of war, then they should be little broader in the expression. Okay, then they started with novels. Okay, now then what happened when they started experimenting with novel, that I'll tell you. Now, when they started writing novels, for those publishing houses, it became a great hit. Okay, it was vastly read, so people started buying more and more novels on war literature. Okay, so it became just see, literature became a profitable business also for publishing houses. They saw that people are appreciating, more. What do you say, more novel reading than poetry. So now what happened, more and more writings, more and more novel writings were done, okay, in the Australian domains. So if you see, if you read very early Australian historical novels, you will see that they had always the war between the European settlers and the Aboriginal people. Just like I told you initially, when the first flight came, they had a war, they had disturbances with Aboriginal people. Okay, and from my day one of teaching you Australian literature, I have been telling you that there were mostly Aboriginal people in the land of Australia before the Europeans and other settlers arrived in Australia. Okay, so at this time, they were Aboriginal people, and remember this, their war started from the time of early flight. Okay, during 18th century, late 18th century and early 19th century. So there were wars, and wars were between whom? Between the European settlers who were coming and between the Aboriginal people. So you can see that from very early times, Australian Aboriginal people, they were not able to stand any other settler coming from different countries, especially from Europe. So they waged war against these European settlers. Okay, because they were very critical about their coming here and settling here. So they had wars. Okay, so the all these perspectives come from the early settlements in the history of Australian history. Okay, and these events have been converted into stories, and these stories have been mm, told to the people in the Australian domain in various forms. Okay, many wrote in the style of memoirs, many wrote short stories, many wrote fictions, many wrote novels, but these were the early writing pieces, these were the early creative pieces that were written in order to denote their early war period. Okay, that started from the invasion of European people. Okay, so if you see the early texts, what they are writing about, about this war related issues, then you will say that there are many popular fictions like Paving the Way. This is the novel Paving the Way, a romance of the Australian bush. It was published in 1893. Okay, and then later many other fictions followed, uh, that showed that many Australians, those who were in the front, okay, those who were ready to fight, they were having very dangerous time there with the settlers, because many Australians also lost their lives, okay, in the battle. So these were mainly aboriginal people, those who fought against the British settlers. Okay, and aboriginal people, they fought to have their own pastoral lands. They wanted to have their own mining industry. They did not want any intruder in their land, so they had a fight. So there's another book related to this. The name of the book is Six Australian Battlefields, written in 1988. And then David Lowe is another Australian fiction writer. He had written his book called Forgotten Rebels, Black Australians Who Fought Back. It was published in 1994. Okay, so these books are very much talking about those wars. Okay, and they also explore, they also reveal some of the mythical beliefs, that were spread at that time, that claimed the peaceful settlement uh, of those early settlers, British settlers in Australia, that they finally settled there despite lots of war. Okay, then after that came World War. Okay. Now, during First World War, what were the experiences? How and what did they write? That we are going to discuss. Now, there were writers who wrote quite well during First World War days. There's a writer called John Butler Cooper. He was born in 1862, died in 1951. Another writer, Mabel Balcom Brooks. He was born in 1890 and died in 1975. Arthur Wright is very famous, born in 1870, died in 1932. You must see this. They belong to the period of World War One and World War Two. Ambrose Pratt is another writer, born in 1874, died in 1944. Okay, so these are some of the early writers who had a knack in writing novels, and they wrote about World War One. Okay, now the writings of these novelists, they talk about the whole society's involvement in war. They spoke how the whole Australian society was involved in war. Okay, and what consequences they had to suffer due to this war, and due to their participation in the war, how their lives were affected. They are trying to show through their novels. Now, this famous writer, Arthur Wright, 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 Arthur Wright, he is also famous for his sports novel. Okay. Uh, Not only does he write on war literature, but he's famous for his sports novel as well, Arthur Wright. Okay. Now, he talks of World War One in the novel The Hate of a Hun. Okay, The Hate of a Hun, Hun, Hun. Hun is a kind of tribe. So the hate of a Hun, in his novel, he talks a lot about the devastation of World War One. Okay, so in this novel, The Hate of a Hun, the novel talks about two young men. Okay, the first is the son of a wealthy Australian man, and the other was coming from German descent. Okay, and these both men, they fall in love with the same girl. Okay, these two men, Australian and another coming from German descent, they fall in love with a girl. Okay, the Australian, the one who is Australian, he finally wins the girl's love. Okay, and the German gets very angry. He threatens to take revenge from the Australian man. Okay, so in this wait, 2 years pass, and then he comes back and he picks the old fight. Who comes back? The German. The German comes back and he picks that old fight and he quarrels with the Australian. Okay. So while they were fighting, Once what happened, this Australian man's wife gets killed. Okay, and when she gets killed, the Australian man disappears again. Then after 20 years again he comes back to Australia. Okay, now he comes back as a businessman. He comes in his business troupe, and he comes now as a businessman during the war time. Okay, so even after 20 years, okay, 20 years have passed and again he has come back. Even after 20 years, his hate towards that Australian enemy is not subsiding. Okay, so he hates him so much that he now promises to, destroy the whole native district as much as possible. The district where that Australian man lived. Now he vows that he will, destroy the whole district because he's so angry on that Australian man. Okay, so he makes attempts to damage everything. He attempts to destroy the whole place. Okay, so you can see that the whole novel now revolves around his attempts to destroy the whole district where that Australian lived. So you can see that it is very well written, and this is written just before World War I. Okay, but if you see if you after that comes World War I, but if you read from the light of World War I, you will find that how this German man is quintessential of the Germans, the German countrymen in total in this novel. Okay, and you will see the whole perspective is running parallel with the whole issue, with the whole politics of World War I. How the Germans also started destroying places, that you will find in World War I. Similar perspective you will find in this novel, although this novel was written just before World War I. Okay, so this novel uh, comes very close to the issue of World War I. Now the next writer is Mabel Balcom Brooks. Okay, he was also a prolific writer of novel. Okay, uh, um, no, it's a female, and Mabel Balcom Brooks. Okay, she is known for for her working in hospitals and charitable institutes during World War II. Okay, so this writer Mabel Balcom Brooks. She was famous for her hospitable service during World War II. Okay, she published her memoirs in 1947. Okay, and then she wrote her novel also, On the Knees of the Gods. Okay, here you can see that it is autobiographical because she is writing that the main protagonist is a female, and how she is treating people, wounded people in the war, that is depicted here in the novel. So she writes about her own experiences. Okay, now we'll move on. Now we will see, we'll move on from World War II to many other wars, and including World War II. So during this years between two world wars, okay, so the writings, the veteran soldiers were writing now. Okay, those who have survived the wars and who have come home, okay, now they are sitting and they are writing novels. Okay, uh, they have got a lot of experience and they are writing in order to make people read about the havocs of war. Okay, so now what happens, before this they came or they started writing, these publishing houses, they started collecting the letters, the diaries of those soldiers who have gone to war. Okay, they started collecting letters, they started collecting the diaries, and now these publishing houses are trying to fictionalize the whole event of war through their letters and diaries. Okay, they are trying to add some fiction and they are trying to publish it for the people to read and for their own monetary profit. Okay, so when this author started writing, then they also added this fictional mode, so that they can be more detailed in their writing, They can be broad in their writing pattern so that people could comprehend more, they'll be able to understand more. Okay, so this Australian war novel became very very popular because of the mainly because of the publications of five prominent works. Okay, between 1928 to 1932, five prominent works were done during this time within the period of 1928 to 1932 by both English as well as Australian writers. Okay, so this was a very significant period not only for Australian writers but for English writers also. When you talk about English writers, famous writers where you must have read Siegfried Sassoon, Robert Graves, Edmund Blunden. These three writers were very famous when you talk about war literature. So they shared their war experiences in the form of their memoirs. Okay, and they used their first person narration, means they used I went there, I experienced that in the first person narration. Okay, and they dropped the ideas of how the events of the war forms a particular point of view in the author that they have expressed. Okay, now when you see Australian war literature, there were three in the English domain: Siegfried Sassoon, Robert Graves, and Edmund Blunden. If you see in the Australian domain, you will see two writers, namely Frederick Manning and Leonard Mann. They wrote their documentary novels, okay, about their battlefield experiences that took place in Belgium and North France. Okay, so in their novel, uh, they are not first person. If you see British novelists, they are writing as a first person, but they are not writing as a first person, as if they are watching the whole event from the outside. Okay, so here you will see the whole events are opening up from the point of view a narrator who is standing outside and watching the whole event. Okay, and he is writing as an outsider looking at the whole devastation of war. So here the point of view comes from a person who doesn't know about war, who is not involved in the war, but he witnesses it, he sees it. Okay, so this is how the story is molded and shaped in Australian domain. Okay, so if you see Australian war novels, you will find that the soldier is isolated from the civil society. Okay, and also uh, you know he is from those people, from those side of the people who is helping the narrator to offer the point of view of both sides. Okay, that means what I just said, that they are the outsiders, they are not the soldiers, they are watching the war. Now, they use this technique of writing, these Australians, they use this technique of writing so that they can express from the army's point of view, soldiers' point of view, as well as from the civilians' point of view. Just because they're watching everything from outside as if they're the omniscient, okay, watching, witnessing everything, including things happening from the army side, including the things happening from the civilian side. So they are writing from both the points of view, how both the sides are affected and how the both the sides feel when when the devastation of war takes place. These Australian novelists have used this technique. Okay, so, this narrative technique also helps the Australian writers to show how the protagonist is passing through various stages. At first, this person, this soldier, is a peaceful civilian. Okay, then second stage comes. In the second stage, he is absorbed in the drills of war. Okay, when he's drilling for war, and which makes him now lose his individuality. Now comes the third stage. Here he realizes that only machines are not sufficient to win the war. Okay, rather it should come from the soldier and his individuality. Okay, as each and every situation is unique to win the war. So he feels now no, individuality has to be gained, and only guns cannot help win the war. Okay, the soldier has to kill and kill and kill in order to win the war. Okay, so the central character here evolves as a soldier, and then when he has survived, he comes back home as a war veteran. Okay, and again he comes back and takes the life of a civilian, but with a changed personality, psychologically devastated. Okay, is not able to settle in the society anymore. He is now, disillusioned. Now he is no more normal man which used to be before the wars. Okay, so the whole change of personality takes place in the whole process of war. This is what he's trying to express. Am I clear, students? No more doubts, queries? Okay, so coming back, yes, so coming back to our perspective, um, where I was. Just a second, students, I lost track where I was. Yes, I'm so sorry. I had lost track where I was. I have to search again and get back to my to the continuity where I had stopped. Okay, now you see. So this is the whole process how there, how Australian writers used to write. Okay, now if you see the English writers, I'll tell you the difference, how they are different. Their central character does not evolve. If you read them broadly, if you read them deeply, you will see that they do not evolve. Okay, they do not try to um, understand the philosophy of devastation. Okay, because they have been born as English gentlemen. They are bound to directly force to join the offices in the British Army. Okay, so when they are writing as the first person. Okay, uh, and for them, if you see British writers, for them, the whole event of war becomes very individualistic and personal for them. Okay, they take it personally, whereas for Australian writers, it is different. Okay, they evolve. They see things broadly and clearly. All right. Because they both of them vary in their cultural identities. So if you see Frederick Manning writing, Frederick Manning, he was also one of the greatest war uh, novelists of the time. Now this was between the two phases, means between World War One and World War Two. So Frederick Manning was born in Australia. He grew up in England. Okay, from the age of 15, and he served British Army as a soldier. So if you see his novel, The Middle Parts of Fortune, okay, so the narrator, uh, uh, okay, so if you see this novel, The Middle Parts of Fortune, uh, so the narrator here, because is the author himself, okay, and he's educated Australian, okay, but he's serving the ordinary soldier in the British Army. So the author here is conducting an in-depth analysis of the military world through the point of view of his lead character, through the protagonist. Okay, the name of the protagonist in this novel is Bourne, Bourne, Bourne. Okay, in the novel, The Middle Parts of Fortune. So here, Bourne experiences all the military techniques. Okay, and also at the same time, he learns the values and ethics of life. So through various incidents in his life, Bourne, the center character, the author is now conveying the message that the battlefield is the place where our humanity is put to test. Okay, and battlefield is the area where humanity could express itself. Okay, so you have to remain sane, you have to remain human in the in between killing, in between devastation. How much you can maintain your sanity is important. That is what is expressed by the author here. Okay, so Manning here, he shows his British counterparts war as highly uncivilized activity. Okay, Manning, we say that British people are the most civilized people in the world, but Manning says that they are most uncivilized people in the world because civilized society will never opt for war. Okay, this is the best idea that Manning is giving through his writing. He says British society is the most uncivilized society. Okay, who fight? Barbarians fight, uncivilized people fight. So similarly, British people are fighting. So that is why they are uncivilized people who are opting war. But if you see Manning and his writing, so he brings out a lot of misery in his novel. He talks about a lot of misery, but he's also providing an opportunity for warriors to discover themselves and learn about what is life in terms of war. So not only he's bringing out the devastation and misery of war, but he's telling the warriors for self-discovery. Okay, he's telling the warriors, where they have struggled a lot in the war field, how to, what does life mean? What is the importance of life in terms of so much devastation? He's trying to tell the warrior. Okay, so he's trying to say that war makes war heroes realize the importance and necessity of different other relationships in war, in life. Okay, so war heroes should remember that they have other responsibilities, other relationships to be fulfilled in their life, and that they must take care of. So if you see the character Bond, he appreciates the value of friendship in one's life. Okay, and he understands that men are dependent on each other at times of critical situations. When the situation is critical, you might go and take help from your enemy as well. This is what Bone is trying to appreciate, Bone is trying to express in the novel as a protagonist. So if you see the novel, as it goes ahead, you cannot ignore, if you are reading the novel, you cannot ignore that, death is always looming across the warrior. Okay, he follows, death follows wherever the soldier goes. Okay, so either he has to experience death himself or he has to witness death. Okay, so anyway, wherever the soldier goes, death follows. Either it is the death is for himself or he is the witness of death. So death is inevitable for a soldier in the war. Okay. So Manning's character Bond is very successful character. Okay, because he shows that the victory in war or victory over rivals is not the ultimate victory. Okay, when you get peace, when you get harmony, that is the ultimate victory. Okay, now next is Leonard Mann's Flesh is Armor. Okay, Leonard Mann, another writer, uh, Australian writer, he writes Flesh in Armor. This was published in 1932. Okay, so just like Manning, Mann also describes the life of Australian soldiers. Okay, now these soldiers are displaced from homes. They have to go to some distant land. Okay, where they are commanded to go. Okay, uh, and how they convert themselves from civilians to soldiers. This conversion is also very nicely depicted by Mann in his novel Flesh in Armor. So, Australian soldiers, for Australian soldiers, they when they go to English lands to fight, so England seems a very strange land, okay, for them. So the novel here traces the development of Australian warriors from the isolation in the beginning to the absorption in a single platoon. They form a single platoon. Platoon means a group of soldiers, and finally it shows how they prove their mettle under single Australian Army Corps. Okay, they form a platoon, and the novel shows that this one platoon, how it fights and how it shows its mettle in the whole war, uh, is the central idea of Flesh is Armor. Okay, so this national fighting force is the major theme of the novel. Okay, national fighting force, this is the major theme of the novel. And the novel also deals with Australian campaign, as the correction of British errors. Okay, what have done, what mess British have created, how the Australians corrected it is also given in the novel. Because now you find Australian societies are refined, they are idealistic society, they do not have errors like British people. Okay, so here actually they are pointing out the many mistakes, the many the many disturbances British people have done is depicted by Mann, and how Australian soldiers try to correct it is vastly shown by Mann. Okay, okay. So now comes the period of Second World War. Okay, so during this period, during Second World War, you can see that from early wars to First World War to Second World War, all these wars are very brutal in their own way. Okay, and the World War has already witnessed a lot of mass destruction. Okay, and then First World War is followed by Second World War. Okay, which is even more dangerous, even more devastating. So there are Australian novelists who look at Second World War World War in terms of Australian fighting against each other. Okay, during those days they had some internal conflicts. These Australian people. Okay, and you can see that this conflict is very nicely depicted in Eric Lambert's two war novels, 20,000 Thieves, and another novel is The Veterans. So here, this dispute, this inner conflict is very nicely depicted by novelist called Eric Lambert. Okay, so in the First World War novels, the themes were usually the problems in society that was produced by wars. But if you see Lambert's novels, these two novels particularly, 20,000 Thieves and The Veterans, these two novels particularly, they see wars as the consequence of class consciousness, civil society. Okay, this war is a consequence of the very class conscious civil people and the fight against imperialism. Okay, so very class conscious civil people, they are having a clash against imperial power. So if you see the novel 20,000 Thieves, it talks on the differences between soldiers and the officers who try to impose brutalizing authority on each other. Okay, so in this novel, the 20,000 Thieves, the central character is Dick, D-I-C-K. Dick is the central character, and he discovers that equality, solidarity of men in the platoon is needed, and the strength they need to derive from each other can be either destructive or constructive. Okay, the whole platoon is there, they have now joined together for war, but the kind of strength they derive from each other may be destructive, may be constructive. This is an open ended idea given by Lambert. Okay, so the theme of this novel is usually dealing with building the, building the team feeling. Okay, the team spirit they're trying to, he's trying to deal with. What kind of team spirit they have in the troop members. Okay, at that time. So for Lambert, the enemy is is the idea of fascism against whom the soldiers are fighting. Okay, and the next novel, Veterans, Veterans, written by Lambert, it attacks the war profiteers. Okay, they are war profiteers also who try to profit from war. Those who are selling weapons, those who are selling the armors. Okay, so they are the profiteers. So Lambert is attacking these profiteers as well who make fortunes out of war. Okay, people are suffering, but they are a business class who are profiting out of war. So the novel deals with a jungle warfare. Okay, during the war in New Guinea. Okay, so in the Australian island, this jungle civilized death. Okay, jungle warfare. Jungle means death. Okay, so they are doing the business of death. That is what is ridiculed by Rambert in the novel The Veterans. Okay. Okay. So now we will go on to narrow down to certain novels, and we'll discuss broadly certain novels which are very much uh, into the war, and which are talking about war and the devastation and the Australian stand towards all this war. We are going to see, and for this we will see Thomas Kinley uh, as a narrator. So Thomas Kinley, if you see, sorry, he is Keneally, Thomas Keneally. He is one of the most highly regarded Australian writers. He is a great novelist. He writes plays also. Okay, he has written many non-fiction essays as well. Okay, and his themes and topics are various on various issues. He talks about the Holocaust, he talks about civil war, he talks about politics, he talks about history, colonialism, okay, Antarctica expedition, and then he also talks about the biblical reference of Joan of Arc. So you can see his themes are very broad, and he's a very successful writer, and he's internationally acclaimed novelist because of his best known work, which he writes about the Holocaust novel Schindler's Ark. Okay, and this was later adapted in the Academy Award, also winning motion picture Schindler's List. If you see, written by, directed by Steven Spielberg. Okay, so this later became a Hollywood movie also called Schindler's List. This was directed by Steven Spielberg. Okay, it became very famous. I think if you browse Netflix or Amazon, you will find the movie Schindler's List. So actually, this is adapted by Thomas Keneally's novel Schindler's Ark. Okay, so the theme here is very diverse in the novel. Okay, so because the theme is, so many themes are there that you have to jot down that what are the different angles from which Keneally is taking his narrative. Okay, so here you can see that the theme generally are like the clash of cultures. You will find conflict between good and evil. You will find triumph and failure constantly happening, taking place in the novel. Okay, sometimes somebody is winning, then sometimes he's failing. So it is all about the trials and tribulations of human beings. Okay, and here Keneally is looking at the past. Okay, not from the present. Okay, but from the perspective of his characters. How his characters are looking into past is very interesting in this novel. So he is both world-renowned writer and he is a bush writer as well. Okay, the bush writing, as I think we have discussed broadly in our earlier classes. So he was a bush writer as well. Okay, and he's a very famous Republican. He's a social commentator. Okay, and he's a historian as well. Okay, but mostly he enjoys his life in the presence of Australian literary world. Okay, now Keneally was born in Sydney, okay, in Australia in 1935, and he was the son of Catholic parents. And his parents were actually Irish, from Irish descent. Okay, so though Keneally was born in Sydney, his early years were spent in his ancestral town called Kimsey in New South Wales. Okay, and he was educated at St. Patrick's College in Strathfield, New South Wales. By 1942, the family moved to Sydney, where Keneally was enrolled in a college called Christian Brothers St. Patrick's College. Okay, so he studied for priesthood also at the St. Patrick's Seminary from 1953 to 1960. Okay, so he's, although he had a priestly studies, but after he stayed there for 6 years as a priest, but then he walked out of that seminary. uh, he was very depressed at that time and he walked out of that, and then he worked as a high school teacher in Sydney during early 1960s, and from 1968 to 1970 he taught drama as a lecturer in the University of New England in South Wales. Okay, so this is a bit about the short biography of Keneally. Now, Keneally has written many other novels also, which were not as as famous as the later novels that he wrote. Okay, so among his early novels, he has written Bring Lark and Harris. This was published in 1967. Then he wrote The Place at Witton, then The Fear. Okay. Then there was another novel, Three Cheers for the Paraclete. These were all his early novels. A Dutiful Daughter, published in 1971. Okay. Then he wrote The Chant of Jimmy Blacksmith. Then Blood Red Sister Rose, a novel of the Maid Orleans, published in 1974. Then A Victim of Aurora, published in 1977. So these were his early novels. His later novels were bit mature work. Just hold on, students. Yeah, okay, let me continue. Yeah, I was talking about the later novels of Keneally. Mm, so his later novels include Gossip from the Forest, then The Playmaker, then he had written The Utility Player, then Our Republic. These are not so famous writings. The Place Where Souls Are Born, A Journey uh, to the Southwest, published in 1992. Okay, and he has experimented with some historical crime series as well, like the Montserrat series. Okay, then The Soldier's Curse, it was published in 2016. This was followed by Unmourned in 2017, The Power Game 2018, The Ink Stain 2019. So you can see so many novels he has written, but among this, Schindler's Ark is one of the very famous works. Okay. Now, some of his very much remembered war novels are Gossip from the Forest. It was published in 1975. Then Season in Purgatory. Okay. This was published in 1977. Then Confederates was published in 1979. So these are some of his war novels. Okay, where he has spoken a lot about war and the problems of war. But if you see among all these, then Schindler's Ark is Thomas Keneally's best-selling novels. Okay, so though it is a work of fiction, but he has done extensive research and he has got a lot of details he has established broadly. He has um, he has broadly spoken about so it is a well researched work, and that is why very broadly, very extensively, he details about the war and how war was established, and then many minor details also he has done. He has created, and very thin line he has drawn between fact and fiction. Okay, especially if you watch the movie, or maybe if you read the novel Schindler's Ark, you will find it's so realistic that you won't be able to find the difference between what is real and what is fiction. Okay, and this is such a well researched work. So here he tries to establish the connections and interconnections between past and present. Okay, so, no other book. He has written, see, I gave you a list of novels by Keneally, but you will see that no other novel could surpass Schindler's Ark. Okay. Now, the Booker Prize judges for 1982, they were not able to arrive at a conclusion whether the book came under the category of fiction or non-fiction. So the judges were also confused in under what genre, under what area this book should be considered. So the judges of the Booker Prize were also confused whether it is a fiction or a non-fiction, because definitely it contained a lot of facts. Okay, and which could not be declared simply as non-fiction. So finally, the judges decided to award him the prize, as they were convinced that he had used his fictional imagination along with factual information. Okay, so he had given a very appropriate mixture of fiction and non-fiction. So in this novel, he recounts the efforts of German industrialists who saved Jews from German execution. German were executing Jews. So here one German industrialist is tries to save Jews from the killing of Jews by the German people. Okay. So in the Australian literary scene, it was very unusual for a Catholic author to write such novels. Okay, it was writing on the Holocaust. I think you know what is Holocaust. The irrational killing of the Jews, mainly done by Hitler. So it was usually the favorite theme of the Jewish authors. Jewish authors used to write a lot about the Holocaust, but a Catholic Christian is writing about Holocaust is something very fresh. from the perspective of Christian Catholics. Okay, so but Keneally, he has expertised in exploring the historical moments of the Holocaust, and he has described the worst of times in the Schindler's Ark. That is why it remains an outstanding work by Keneally. Okay, so let us see what is this Schindler's Ark. Okay, and what are the basic themes, what is the plot that we are going to see here. Okay, so we see that usually when we see the war, then we see that second war actually it witnessed the most inhuman attack on humanity. Okay, so second world war remains unprecedented in many perspectives, in many points of views. Okay, like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombing was horrendous act uh, done by them. Then this was all at the same time, you can see the notorious Holocaust was done. That was the most tragic event that ever happened in the history of humanity. Okay, where several people who survived this difficult time, they have expressed, they have recounted those tragic historical times. So many times literary texts they attempt to faithfully show the horrors of Holocaust that's already marked in the history. So if you see Schindler's Ark, it is one such very interesting novel who talks of the trials and triumphs of a person called Oscar Schindler. Okay, Oscar Schindler, as I told you, is a German businessman. Now, this German businessman had saved many Jewish lives from the gas chambers in concentration camps. Okay, if you don't know, I must tell you that the Germans, under the leadership of Hitler, what they did, they made a concentration camp, and they made a camp. Okay, and there they uh, imprisoned as many as many Jews as possible. They thought that at that time they thought that maybe all the Jews are there in that camp, and then in the they captured them in the camp, the Jews in the camp, and they put some poisonous chemical in that camp, so that many Jewish had a horrendous death. Okay. So this was what happened in the in the Holocaust. Okay, so here it shows that this man Oscar Schindler, how this German businessman, how he tried to save as many Jews as possible from this concentration camp. Okay, and then it shows the the trials and tribulations of those Jews who survived the Holocaust. Okay, so what difficulties did they have, or what kind of trauma did they pass through when they when they try to escape from the Holocaust. So that has been given depicted in Schindler's Ark. Okay. So if you read the book, you will see that this Holocaust movement was one of the darkest phases in the history of human, human mankind. Okay. Now, what is this Schindler's Ark and how the title is relevant? Just see this novel, Schindler's Ark, was published in 1982. Okay, and this was published in England under the title Schindler's Ark. So, the Ark, A-R-K, Ark refers to the covenant, which belongs to Judaism. It symbolically refers to God's promise of security to the Jews. Okay, so it symbolically says that God has promised to give security to the Jews. So that is what Ark stands for. Okay, so Ark actually means, symbolically it means God's promise to save, to keep the Jews secure. So the title is metaphorical. It stands for Schindler's Assurance. Who is Schindler? Schindler is that businessman. Okay, Schindler is the businessman, Oscar Schindler. Okay, so it is actually Schindler who is assuring. Okay, this businessman Schindler, he is assuring assuring to protect the Jewish workers. Okay, from from the camp, from the concentration camp. So the publishers at that time, they were also worried that the title may give anger of people, because Ark might be mistaken to Noah's Ark. Okay, Noah's Ark is actually biblical. Ark, A-R-K, Ark. Noah's Ark is biblical. Noah's Ark actually was a huge boat which was built under God's order by Noah. Okay, to save all the creatures of the world from huge flood. There was a flood coming in biblical reference. There was a flood coming. So God ordered Noah to build a huge ark. Ark here means ship, a huge ship, and to ask every believer to come to that ship, because very soon flood is coming, and people will drown to that, and humanity will perish. So not only human, but you try to bring all the animals together. Okay, so that they survived the great floods. So those who believed in God, those who believed in his order, they climbed up the ship. Others, those who did not believe, they died in the flood. So this is the biblical reference. So the publishers, they were scared because this ark might be misinterpreted. Christians might get angry because of the word ark. Okay. So also they felt that that they are comparing Jews with animals. Okay, would be humiliating ark, because in that ship, not only human beings but animals were also stored so that they will survive. So publishers were scared that Jewish also people might get angry, because they might think that they are compared to animals. But finally it was released in United States as Schindler's List. They removed this word ark. Okay, now we'll see what is the research done by the writer, and how it ended up to such a beautiful story, such a such a heart provoking story that we'll see. Now what happened actually, Germany was defeated in World War I. Okay, this is what happened, and this is what made up to Schindler's Ark. So Germany was defeated in World War I. The World War I ended in 1919. So these Germans were held responsible for maximum damage of the war, and they were asked to pay commission by the Great Britain and France. Great Britain and France said, told Germany that you have only caused a lot of destruction and loss. You are going to give compensation. Okay. So German people's economy was worst affected. Okay. Because strict sanctions were imposed on them. Britain and France were angry. So Germany went through worst times after First World War. So as a result, the people had to fight against poverty and unemployment. So there was unemployment, poverty everywhere in Germany. People of Germany had a lot of problem. So in this atmosphere, there was a pain, there was frustration, and at this time, Adolf Hitler, who was Austrian, not Australian, Austria, Austrian by birth, and he was serving German army. He became the leader of the Nazi party. Okay, so because of lot of frustration going on at that time in the German domain, Adolf Hitler roused. Okay, and actually he was Austrian, but he had served German army. He became leader of the Nazi party. Okay, and he gave lot of speeches at that time to arouse the spirit of German nationalism. Okay, and his Nazi party emerged victorious in 1932 election. There was election in 1932. Okay, and he had a party. He had his own political party. called the Nazi Party. Okay, NAZI, Nazi Party. Now it won election. It got lot of popularity, and it won the election in 1932. The next year, yeah. So sorry, there was network issue, and it got disconnected somehow. Okay. So yes, we were in the in the history of this dark period of German history. So and just see how this Australian people got impacted because of this, and how they are writing about this Holocaust. You just have to mark this. Now what happens? Uh, so here, what I said, that 1932 election was won by the Nazi Party. Okay, and next year, that is in 1933, Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany, and very soon his rule became a dictatorship. People appointed him. Okay, he became the Chancellor, but very soon he converted himself into a dictator. Okay, and Nazis considered Jews as the reason. See, they also became disillusioned, and Nazis considered Jews as the reason for their miseries. Okay, miseries in Germany after World War One. So Hitler considered Jew as an inferior race, and he thought that he said that Jews are a threat, uh, to the establishment of Aryans. Okay, Aryans were the German race. He thought that the German race was the superior race, and the Nazis were the sorry, and the Jews were the inferior race, and they are the cause of all the troubles, all the economical crisis that they were undergoing. Actually, this is not true. This is a kind of disillusionment that he had. So his national and foreign policy clearly stated his futurist plan for imperialist Germany. Okay, so he also wanted an imperial, like they had imperial Britain. Britain will capture everybody. Britain is considered to be superior. Similarly, Hitler also wanted an imperialist Germany. Okay, and he thought that imperialist Germany will uphold the superiority of glory of the Aryan race. I think you understand what is Aryan race. The white people or the German people were superior. They were the Aryans, according to Hitler. Okay, and the other were inferior, especially the Jews. So the Nazis passed anti-Semitic laws, okay, which gave a lot of restrictions to the rights of Jews. So Jews were suppressed at that time. And this first concentration camp was set up by Nazis in South Germany. Okay, first concentration camp was in South Germany, which was followed by many other camps throughout the country, and they imprisoned Jews. In this concentration camp, many were innocent for doing nothing, they were imprisoned in the Jews. because he thought that all Jews are mischievous people. So, as a part of their expansion policy to assert the supremacy of Aryan race, they started capturing new territories, okay, Jewish territories. So, Britain and France declared war against Germany in 1939 because it violated the Treaty of Versailles by annexing many new territories. So, they had a treaty with that Germany will never encroach the land of Europe. But Germany was continuously encroaching in the lands of Europe. So Britain and France they declared war against Germany in 1939. Okay, so here what happened? There was a bombing. Now Japanese military people they bombed Pearl Harbor. Okay, Pearl Harbor is one of Germany's allies. Okay, first in United States, and Japan wanted to join hands with the British. Okay, because now Japan and United States were sheer enemies. Now Jews from Poland, Australia, and Czechoslovakia, they formed the newly occupied territories. They were transported, and they were, they were asked to stay in overcrowded and unhygienic place. Okay, and these Jews in the concentration camps, and they were treated as slaves. Okay, these Jewish people. Okay, so now what happened? These Jewish people they were collected and they were thrown in this concentration camp. Okay, and then what happened? The final genocide took place. What happened here? All these Jews were transported to these camps, and then poisonous gas was spread in these camps. Okay, and Jewish people were killed ruthlessly inside these deadly gas chambers. Okay, so the external world was totally ignorant was what was happening in Germany in those days. This media and newspapers, there were no there was it was not such active as it is now. So people couldn't know what is happening in Germany. Okay, and what was happening in their occupied territories, they couldn't know. So during the final phase of World War II, Nazi officials erased. They tried to erase all the evidences of the genocide that they had done. Okay, they tried to erase all these witnesses. Yes. So so these Nazi people they tried to erase all the evidences of this genocide. Okay, so by the time the war happened, and these Jews were liberated from the clutches of Germans. So around 6 million Jews had already been killed by Nazis. At that time, it was known. So the downfall of Germany started with its disastrous invasion of Soviet Union. Soviet Union went into they captured Germany, and there it found what these Nazis were doing with the Jewish people. Okay, so everything was out, and Hitler was Hitler and his plottings, whatever he did, his crime was let out. So what happened? Uh, Hitler committed suicide when Germany was closed in all its sides by the non-aggression pact. Okay, Soviet Union made that pact, and it closed down all this Germany's, or you can say the Nazis atrocities. So when these things were let out, when Soviet Union captured Germany, Hitler committed suicide. So within a few days, Hitler's suicide in his bunker in Berlin was known, and in 30th April 1945, it was declared that Hitler is dead. So this was the World War, the largest war fought in the history of the world. Okay, so where you can see From every space, everywhere you could see mass destruction taking place. Starting from Australia, see the condition of the West. So after the war, the Nazis who were involved in the Holocaust were tried for their crimes. Okay, they were seized. Then the Jews demanded for a separate homeland because they had lost everything, and this was supported by the United States. United States accepted in the UN in 1949, and a separate homeland was created for them out of Palestine. Okay. Now, how the novel goes, you can see here. Yes. So as I told you that the novel was surrounded by controversy before it came to the limelight. I have told you a lot of publishers were also scared what to do with this. So here you see that in Schindler's Ark, Kennedy actually shows the personal tragedies behind 6 million people who lost their near and dear ones. Okay, and there were many others who got encountered in death, and that too a very tragic kind of death. So, which the Jews witnessed. Okay, so this is broadly and very with a very very disheartening tone. The whole novel moves on. Okay, and it shows Schindler's Ark shows the darkness. Okay, that preoccupied the whole component of the book, and the book also captures very skillfully the master character Oscar Schindler. Okay, his contribution. So Kennedy here employs two different narrative techniques in order to show the very ambiguous character like Oscar. Okay, so this Oscar is a long-term member of the Nazi party. Okay, see, he belongs to Nazi party. Okay, and Oscar is a capitalist who makes money even during war. Okay, he does black marketing. He's a womanizer. He is alcoholic. So you see all sorts of negativities in Oscar. Okay, yet he risks his life and fortune to safeguard some of the Jews. And, he claims them as his own laborers, who were not his laborers, but he said no, he should save their lives. He said that they are his laborers and who are engaged in doing work during warfare. So they must be left free. So this is how he manipulated with the Nazis, and he let many Jewish people out of those concentration camps. So he bribes the German officials heavily to run his factories, which produce enamelware that was used to feed the German army. Okay, and shells that were used to kill the Jews. So although he had a factory of these destructive things, but yet he saved many people, many Jewish people from these camps. So later, in Kennedy's word, you can say that Schindler, provided a land of safety, okay, that could save these Jews from the war. Okay, and he saved more than 1,000 Jews from the Nazi death camps. So Schindler, you can see, although he is very notorious for his adulterous behavior, okay, Schindler is very disloyal towards his wife. Schindler's wife invited him to tea and he refuses, as he is considered it would be indecent to drink tea with the victim because he has cheated upon his wife, so he doesn't prefer to drink tea also with her. So it is actually telling that Kennedy used the term victim to describe Schindler's wife to prove in later stages that he has become the savior of many Jewish prison victims. Okay, so this you must mark. He doesn't only cheats his wife, but he doesn't drink tea from his wife's hand because she belongs to the Christian lot, to the Nazi side. Okay, whereas he is helping the Jewish people. Okay, so he thinks that he cannot drink tea from the victim side because he is giving help to the opposite side, to the Jews. Okay, so this is actually moral ambiguity in the character of Oscar. Okay, so you can find two characteristics in Oscar, that he is his anxiety and his ambiguity. Okay, and this his anxiety and ambiguity goes to the peak. Um, where I was. Yes. So you can see that two things are very clear, that he is very anxious and he is very ambiguous. Okay. And he gets to the heights of his ambiguity and anxiety because, he prisoners and the readers were not sure that who would survive and who would lose their lives. He is trying to save, but nobody is sure here who is going to be saved and who is going to uh, who is going to die, who is going to survive. There was no assurance at that time. But still, he tries to do his best. So, even after the war, many prisoners were under the grip of fear that they would be attacked by the retreating German army. Okay, prisoners were still scared, although they were, set out with the help of Oscar, but still they were in fear, they were in trauma that maybe any time soon German army will catch them up and they'll kill them. Okay, but when the Russian officers come, they are finally saved. Okay. So here you will see, when you are reading this book, you will find until the end you will not be able to guess the character of Schindler. He's a completely unpredictable character. Why? Because he's ambiguous also. That is why ambiguous also, because coming from the Nazi side, he's helping the Jews. So that makes his identity as a very ambiguous one, a very confused one. Okay, but finally he's able to save many Jewish people. He's finally able to let out many Jewish people, and finally when the Russians they come and they get hold of the whole situation, then finally these Jewish people are saved, and he becomes one of the remarkable characters who helps in saving the lives of human beings. Okay, so clearly you see here he uses symbols and images to show the readers to arrive at their own readings. You read, you understand of your own. Okay, so many times Kinnelly leaves the issues open ended. Okay, so he Kennelly also combines storytelling with his great research work. Okay, history and storytelling is very much mixed. As I told you, fiction and non-fiction is very minutely mixed with each other. So both these techniques they complement each other. So Schindler's Ark, it's a chilling portrayal of inhumanity. It demonstrates through Schindler's point of view that humans can achieve true sympathy for fellow human beings. Okay, although it is he's an enemy, but when he has done no harm, if you can save him and make get him back to friendship with him, then what's wrong? So this is what is the idea of the story. So Schindler here character is a very different kind of character who completely believes in humanity, and he believes that true humanity can be achieved by fellow feeling. So one of Schindler's Jews removes his gold dental work. He had he had tooth made up of gold. One Jewish man. Okay, so you know, he wanted to. He loved at the end of the story. He loved Jewish man. He loved Schindler so much that he removes one of his golden tooth and he melts it down to make a ring for Schindler. Okay, a profound love that he is showing towards Schindler for saving his life. Okay, so here, he says at the end, it's written in the novel, he who saves a single life saves the world entire. Such a great word. Okay, it's a great saying. He who saves a single life saves the whole world. So this is an important message that is sent out by Schindler. Okay. Now, with this particular block comes to an end, and I think it was very interesting to read, to know the war literature, and especially when it is written from the perspective of the German Nazi movement, how the Nazi party evolved, and then how finally it was devastated. It is interesting to read, and it is also interesting to read how the talent of narration mixes very minutely. He blurs the boundary between fiction and non-fiction. That is a remarkable part in the work in the present work in Schindler's Ark. So for today, we are going to end this class now. Tomorrow we'll meet again at 6 in the evening, and we'll continue with our next block. Till then, have a good day.